Hi, everyone. Larry Bailey here, Mortgage Workflow Partners, bringing you this week's market update. We're going to cover what happened last week, July 14th, 2025. But before we do, today's a very, very special day. I am now a published author, although self-published. Does that count? You can find my new book, Workflow Before Technology: Why Mortgage Companies That Fix Operations First Win More. A practical guide to solving workflow breakdowns before investing into tech. You can find it on Amazon. You can download it both in paperback as well as Kindle. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Read the sample. I think it's pretty awesome to be able to take ideas that I've been talking about now for 13 years, really since 2012 when I went to work for Ellie Mae, implementing Encompass for partners across the country of all sizes, as well as fixing things. And I said, basically, where's your workflow? And I had 0 companies actually give me their written workflow in a year and a half, 0. And so it's been my mission really since then to figure out a practical way to bring these concepts to everyone, including you. And I really hope you pay close attention to the details. And of course, if there's anything that Mortgage Workflow Partners can do for you, just go to mortgageworkflowpartners.com, click contact us, or you can find me directly on LinkedIn or on the Mastering Encompass community. Honestly, it's practically impossible not to find me. And I will respond usually right away, unless I'm in the middle of a meeting with a client, of course. So let's get into the market news. Here's what happened in the week of July 14th. Tariffs had less impact on inflation than expected. Go figure. Home builder confidence stayed low, and single-family construction slowed despite a bump in overall activity. Here's the stories that we're going to be going through today. First one is we've got consumer inflation rises in June, but the tariff impact is limited. Wholesale inflation eases more than expected is the next story. That's followed by a slight uptick in builder confidence amid ongoing market strains. Next story, we've got single-family home construction softens. Next story we've got is stronger spending and a mixed jobs picture. We've got a family hack of the week for you. We've got to what to look for this week. And let's get into this first story. We've got a consumer inflation rises in June, but tariff impacts are limited. Keep in mind that if you're listening to me on podcast or replay, thank you very much. Make sure you head over to masteringencompass.com to check out the full video replay. I guarantee you'll get more out of it than just listening to me speak. Images always have a bigger impact than just listening or reading yourself. We've got inflation ticking up in June with the consumer price index, that's the CPI, rising 0.3% for the month. Compared to last year, prices are up 2.7%, which is a slight increase from the 2.4% we saw in May. This rise was mainly due to higher energy prices, which jumped 0.9%, and a modest 0.3% in food costs. The core inflation, that strips out the food and energy, which tend to be volatile, that rose 0.2% in June, which on a yearly basis, the core prices are up 2.9%, a slight increase from the annual pace of 2.8% we saw in May. Both readings came in just below expectations. Part of that annual increase in both the headline and the core inflation readings are due to how inflation is calculated. It's important to remember that the low numbers from June of 2024, yep, they're out. So that means that the 12-month average had been replaced by higher figures from this year, which is why we're starting to see this. The bottom line, what we saw while tariffs were expected to push prices higher this year, their impact was smaller than feared or expected. Some goods like home furnishings and clothing did see increases, but car prices fell and food prices rose only slightly. The shelter remains the single biggest factor in the inflation calculation, making up a large portion of the overall index. As an example, in June, housing costs rose modestly, and the annual rate edged down to 3.8%. Next story is wholesale inflation eases more than expected. At the wholesale level, we saw prices holding steady in June after an upward revised 0.3% increase in May. Over the last year, wholesale inflation has slowed to 2.3%, down from 2.7%, which, by the way, is the lowest level since September. Core wholesale prices, which exclude food and energy, were also flat, with the annual rate easing from 2.6% all the way back down from 3.2%. Bottom line here is that while May's readings were revised higher, the overall report was better than feared. Some tariff-related businesses showed up but were not widespread. These wholesale numbers matter because they influence, of course, the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, which is the personal consumption expenditures. That's the PCE index. While a few shared categories like portfolio management saw price increases, others like healthcare and airline travel remained muted or actually declined. Overall, this data shouldn't spark a sharp rise in the PCE on the next report, which will be released on July 31st later this month. So we have a next story is a slight uptick in builder confidence among ongoing strains. It's like the builders can't make up their minds, right? Back and forth, back and forth. And we see that, right? Back in February, we saw 42. It fell, it rise, it fell, it fell. It's now rise. Again, 42 from 33. February to July is still significantly down, right? So the home builder confidence saw a slight rise in July, relatively speaking, of course, moving from 32 to 33, according to the National Association of Home Builders, also known as NAHB. While this marks a small step in the right direction, it's still well below the 50-point level that signals market growth and continues its 15-month stretch of weak sentiment. Among those key indicators, buyer traffic also reached its lowest level since 2022, though builders did report small improvements in both current and expected future sales. Bottom line, builders remain cautious due to high interest rates and ongoing economic uncertainty, both of which continue to dampen confidence and limit activity. And I'll tell you what else it does, personal note here, it also limits their ability to predict what to do. Nobody wants to start digging in the ground not knowing how much money you're going to make. That's just not the way business works. So uncertainty is really causing the biggest fear as far as I can tell. But because once you start digging, you got to get these things done into the market. So we'll see what happens here. Next story is single-family home construction softens. June saw a 4.6% increase in overall housing starts, but this was entirely driven by multifamily projects. Single-family construction dropped 4.6%. Similarly, overall building permits rose slightly by 0.2%, yet single-family permits declined by 3.7%. So, I'm telling you, it's hard to keep track of this stuff. Completions also fell across the boards for both housing, meaning both multifamily and single-family. Bottom line of this story is that new construction isn't keeping pace with demand. We've talked about this, I don't know, forever. Housing starts of 1.3 million and permits of 1.4 million and completions of 1.3 million all fall short of the 1.8 million new households being formed annually on average over the last 5 years, contributing to an ongoing supply of shortage supply that continues to support home values where they are. We'll see. Next story is stronger spending and a mixed jobs picture. So retail sales jumped 0.6% in June, bouncing back from May's 0.9% drop. Some of the biggest gains were seen at car dealerships, clothing stores, home improvement centers, and restaurants. A key measure of retail sales known as the quote control group, close quote, which excludes categories like auto and gas and building materials and food services, that also beat forecasts with a 0.5% gain. Those May figures were revised lower. This data is important because it only directly affects economic growth numbers for the second quarter. That's it, just that. On the jobs front, new employment claims fell 221,000, which, by the way, is the lowest since April. However, the number of continuing claims rose slightly to 1.956 million. This figure has stayed above 1.9 million now for 8 straight weeks, suggesting many job seekers are struggling to find work quickly. We've got a family hack of the week here. And again, if you're listening to this on podcast, come over to here in this spot in the video replay at masteringandcompass.com. Check out the recipe. July 23rd marks the official National Peanut Butter and Chocolate Day. Sounds like Reese's, doesn't it? Although any day is perfect, of course. For these no-bake, so if you're not a baker, this maybe is for you, chocolate peanut butter bars from all recipes. It yields 2 dozen. Check out the recipe here on screen at this point in the recording. What to look for this week, we'll see key housing market updates with existing home sales report for June due on Wednesday this week. That's followed by new home sales report on Thursday. And then also Thursday, look for the latest job claims data. So we'll see what's going on there. And one more plug. When you do buy this book, by the way, there is a spot that you can download a workbook that helps guide you through the whole workflow before technology. So you can do this on your own. I try to guide you through the whole point of there's over 3,000 companies that simply use Encompass. There's a whole bunch of other companies. Doesn't matter what technology you use, gang. I guarantee you'll find value in just getting reminded about workflow has to be figured out before you use any technology. It just has to be figured out. And what actually happens, interestingly enough, is once you figure out the workflow and then you deploy technology, what happens is you come back to that workflow. You're like, well, we could tweak this better and we could tweak that better. And it's always this continuous cycle of review, improve, review, improve. And I go over that in the book. Feel free to check it out over at Amazon. And I thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. My name is Larry Bailey, Mortgage Workflow Partners. You make it a great day. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.